To say that our sense of medieval music is overwhelmingly dependent upon vocal music is true, I think, but it's a statement about what survives. What's very clear, I mean, anyone who has ever walked around a medieval church and looked up will have seen vast numbers of sculptures of musical instruments. I mean, bagpipes, flutes, fiddles, harps, lutes. I mean, medieval musicians had access to an immense range of instruments, I mean, far wider than we have now. Many of them, as we can tell from the better paintings and sculptures, I mean, exquisitely made. More than that, they draw upon really the immensely complex history of Europe from the late Roman Empire onwards. I mean, think, for example, of a performance of the string quartet. There you have musicians drawing sound from violins, violas and cellos with a classic piece of nomad technology. It's a hank of horsehair on a stick. It's got Central Asia and fast-moving equestrian nomads written all over it. That is part of the complex legacy of medieval instrumental playing. You know, it goes right back through all sorts of layers of migration and so on to the Roman Empire, and is itself an immensely interesting story. But the only medieval music we can have any access to, and it's often a very imperfect access, is what was written down. And the music of instrumentalists really existed up here and in there. It's in brains and in hands. It's transmitted from person to person, often by imitation, and the amount that gets written down is very, very small. So what is visible to us, or audible I should say, of medieval music is what was written down. And that obviously is the music of a relatively small number of persons, or rather, it's actually quite a large number of persons, but within a fairly restricted orbit, which is it's essentially the music of the church and for worship, and as you go later it broadens and you find that more secular music appears. And the question of how far, this is something really, I must say, I've been involved with really all my academic life now, going back 30 years, the question of how far the instruments you see in these churches, sculpted in the roofs and so on, how far they actually had a place in the music that's written down and survives, or how far in fact their domain was all that stuff we don't have, is a very complex question to which many different answers can be returned. But essentially, I have always thought that to compose in the Middle Ages, if by that you mean something that gets deposited on vellum or parchment, to do that is to exploit the human voice first and foremost.